Okay. Let's see if we want to make any other comment here. Did we talk about the Word becoming flesh? It really messes me up when I'm teaching the same thing in two different areas. You know what I mean? You know, like at school and here. But did I talk about the Word becoming flesh? Okay, notice that it says that, this is verse 14. Let me back up. I'm sort of getting my act together here. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay, then in 14, you have, and the Word became flesh. All right, that's the last time you'll see the word occur as far as the Greek word logos, referring to Jesus. Everybody with me now? 4 times. Okay, but you don't have Jesus mentioned until verse 17. We know who John's talking about from verse 1 and verse 14, but you don't have his name mentioned until 17. Now, when it says he became flesh, anybody remember reading anything about that? He didn't say he became a man. He didn't say that he became a body, but he became what? Flesh. And that's really significant because it signifies all of our human weaknesses. See, he became this right here, flesh. And I think that's really important for us to understand, that Jesus came into this world, to be like us, in every respect, tempted in every respect. Although he, did not sin, but nevertheless, he became like us. Now, notice that it says that, let's see, where does it say that? Verse 14. Okay. And we beheld his glory. The word beheld there is this word right here. Let's see, all these are little sissy points. Okay. Or you sure get used to certain things, don't you? Older you get. Okay, this is the word used for beheld. It's a Greek word, of course, but I want to show it to you because it is from another word we're very familiar with. If you go to a movie, you go to what kind of place? A theater. So this is the word from which we get theater. Now, the word, notice that the text says, we beheld his glory. So it's not like Jesus was walking down the sidewalk and then someone else was walking down the sidewalk toward him, John, and they just sort of glanced at each other, hey, how you doing? Nice day or whatever, right? You see, that's not the way it is. They beheld him. They really looked at him. They saw him and saw his works, saw his signs, and they really, took it in, just like you'd go to a theater and you're sitting there and you really, take in, what you're seeing.
They were probably in shock too, weren't you?
Well, if not shocked, they were amazed. Do you remember my other word for miracle? Signs, miracle, wonder. They were definitely in amazement, weren't they? All right, now, and he is, all right, how did they behold his glory? How do you behold glory? Let's see, in John 2, after the first miracle, let's see, it says, verse 11, this is the beginning of the signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed it. What is glory? That's a hard thing for me to define.
Wanted to see God's glory on the outside.
Yeah.
He said, you can't see my face because it'll kill you.
So glory is, well, I have such a hard time defining it. It's like you see the results of glory. don't you? I mean, you really can't see glory as such. You can see the evidence of glory. In Isaiah 6, when Isaiah, the walls were shaken and all of that, when he had his vision and everything, he saw the evidence, of God's glory. Okay, he became flesh and dwelt among us. Dwelt. Look here. This is an important word. Okay, I think actually, Brother Allen, by the way, I should have mentioned, y'all know Brother Allen has gone to free lectures, and I'm usually gone at this time too. Ms. Life is leaving. She's leaving after worship today. And so y'all be praying for them. I was supposed to speak. I speak every year. But I just didn't think that I could. Have any of you ever been to lectures at Freed Hardeman? You've been somewhere, though, okay? What you do is you stay in somebody else's house, and then you get up every morning at 7 o'clock, and then you go to campus, and you go to the sports center, and you go to the Lord Auditorium. You go back to the sports center to eat lunch with the associates, the Freed Hardeman associates. Then you go back, and you go up these stairs and down these stairs. And I just didn't think I could do that every day and night. And it goes into like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm just not there yet. So I'm a sissy, I guess. So I called them and told them, I said, I can't do it. And I recommended Steve Higginbotham, and he's doing my lesson. But at any rate, okay, dwelt among us. Now, you remember Brother Allen in one of his sermons, Jesus in each book of the Bible, was it Exodus, I guess, that he was talking about this? In the wilderness, where did God, quote, dwell? Tabernacle. In the tabernacle, okay? So you could say that Jesus tabernacled among us. So here's a beautiful image to me. In the Old Testament, you've got God, dwelling, as it were, on where did he come? On top of what? The Ark of the Covenant, the Shekinah. And that's where his, quote, presence was evidenced. But now we have God coming to the earth and dwelling here, you see. And dwelling how? In the what? In the flesh. What do you think about that? So see, you had God at the tabernacle, but now he, in this word dwelled, really signifies tabernacle. And so now it's in the flesh. I just love that particular, thought. All right, only begotten means unique. Means unique. So the glory as of the unique, one of the Father. Do you know the name Hugo McCord? Nobody knows the name? Okay, a couple of disciples. Okay. Brother McCord, a dear friend of mine, he's a Mississippi guy. He's now long gone. Taught at Oklahoma Christian for many, many years. This was years ago. And just a scholar, Greek, Hebrew, and all that. He has a translation of the New Testament, and he also has a translation of Proverbs and Psalms. And so back in the 80s, I was living at Knoxville teaching at school when I was working on my doctorate at UT. And Brother McCord called me one day. And by the way, he had at that time had forgotten more about the Bible than I'll ever know, in my lifetime. And he said, Brother Live, he's very kind. Any of you ever hear him preach? He's an incredibly kind, kind of soft, person. And anyway, unlike my gruffness, but anyway, recently I was told that there was a church that didn't hire me because I was gruff. And I said, well, I'm glad I learned that. Anyway, anyhow, Brother McCord said, Brother Light, I got some brethren that are really giving me a hard time about my translation of John 3:16. He translated John 3:16 in the beginning. No, wait a minute. For God so loved the world that he gave his unique Son. And they were all over him because he didn't render it only begotten. Okay? And the Greek word is, I could put it up here, is pronounced monogenes. And guess what the word means? One of a kind, unique. And he said, what do you think about it? I said, Brother McCord, and I was flattered that he even asked my opinion. But anyway, I said, Brother McCord, I said, what does the word mean? He said, it means unique. I said, well, translate it unique. And I said, and besides that, those that are complaining to you don't know a Greek letter from a chicken scratch. And that was my opinion then, and it's my opinion now. A lot of people are down on things that they're not up on. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? I kind of like that. They're down on things they're not up on. And so I try to study and kind of get it together before I make any kind of crazy claim or something. Okay, so it means unique. I did see a funny thing one time. Some of these signs you see on the road, unique uniforms. And as I went past that, I thought,
that's an oxymoron.
Yeah. I thought, well, if it's a uniform, it's supposed to be unique, isn't it? So it's a tautology, isn't it? But at any rate, I get hung up on stuff like that. Okay, what else you got? Anything? Full of grace and truth. John bore witness of him and cried out. The word cry, I'm sorry.
For comment, it's talking about glory. In 1 Timothy, I believe it's 1 Timothy 1:11, it talks about the glorious gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing.
Okay. Very good.
Hey, excuse me, when you were saying that we behold glory, how do we behold glory? Is that by believing?
Well, we see the evidence, I think, of God's revelation. It's revealed in His Word about the giving of His Son. All of His works, the works of Jesus, are revealed in the Word, and we see all of that, and I think that's how we behold His glory. All right, now John cried out. The word cry here is from a word that means to shout with a loud voice. Now that's really going to be significant when it comes to John 11. You remember that, John? On cry? You remember the mourners, where was Lazarus? He was at what city? Bethany, okay. And how far is that from Jerusalem? 2 miles. Very good. Okay. And guess who came from Jerusalem? Mourners. I mean, boy, they really put it on back then, okay? And it says that they cried. And guess what word's used? A word that means just to carry, wail, and so on. But then it mentions that Jesus, wept, but it's a different word. It's a softer, kind of weeping. So you see the contrast there in John. We'll talk more about that in John, chapter 11. All right, let's see. And John says, this is he of whom I said, he who comes after me is preferred before me. We'll see more about this in chapter 3. But John is somebody who really knew his place, I think. John's always pointing people to Jesus. In a minute, we're going to see, hopefully, where he points Andrew and John to Jesus. He says, behold the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world in verse 29. And then is it 35? Let's see. No, it's in, he says it again. Yeah, verse 36. And so John points, behold the Lamb of God, and then 2 of his disciples followed him. So John always knew his place. Is that a lesson for us right there? Yes. He was willing to play second fiddle. There's some people not willing to play, second fiddle. If they can't be the or the show, or the big dog or whatever, then they're not willing to be involved, at all. And that's not That's just crazy. I've always told my students, I said, try to figure out what your talents are, and then do your best to exercise those talents as long as God gives you life, right? And don't be jealous that you don't have somebody else's talent. If there's some people that I don't ever want to lead a song. That's not being ugly or anything. They're just not song leaders. But they may be the best Bible class teacher ever or something else, right? So I think the challenge for all of us is really to sort of find our niche and see where we fit in, as it were. Okay, anything? All right, we of His fullness have received and grace for grace. All right, let's pause on grace for grace. When I first read that a long time ago, I didn't have an idea at all of what it was talking about. We have received grace for grace. That's New King James. I think it's the same in the King James, isn't it? Jonathan, that's what you're looking at, isn't it?
I've got American Standard open. It's grace for grace.
Grace for grace? Okay. Let me hear some other translations. Linda, was it you that had the ESV? Or who was it?
I've got a CSB.
Okay, I think it was Garrett. Excuse me, Linda, go ahead.
Grace upon grace.
Grace upon grace. Okay. Is it anathema if I ask for the NIV reading? I can't remember it. Anybody got it on the phone? I can look. No, I can't. My phone's in my truck. You got a Bible app on your phone? I can find something just like that.
They're looking for it.
What you got, Alana?
Grace in place of grace.
Grace in place of grace. Okay, that's a little bit better. The idea is this. We and of His fullness we have all received grace, what'd you say?
In place of grace.
Grace in place of grace. This says grace for grace. But the idea is when we receive a blessing because of His grace, and we enjoy that blessing, and then it starts to run out, guess what happens? And another one comes right behind. And I tried to make that clear. Did y'all see that anywhere?
Did you mention the tides, or is that just in my mind?
The tide?
The waves coming in.
No, that's in your mind, but I like the illustration. Go ahead.
I just, we'd say one after another, maybe in our
Yeah.
nomenclature, but I think of the waves coming in on the ocean, just they keep on coming.
Okay. When they come in, they go back, they come in, okay. I like that illustration. May I use that?
Sure.
Okay, good. As one blessing recedes, another blessing replaces it. I have that underscored on page 62. As one blessing recedes, another one replaces it. Okay, the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Now, some people think that what's being emphasized here is that under Moses, it was nothing but law and no grace. And then, they see a sort of a mutual exclusiveness going on here between Moses on the one hand and who? And Jesus on the other hand. So the question is, was there any grace manifested in the Old Testament? Give an example, Donald.
Well,
Can you think of one?
God was going to destroy Sodom, and
Okay. Spared Lot
he spared Lot
and his family.
and there's other places he had his mind to do something, and it was almost knocked down.
Right. What about with Adam and Eve? His justice, see, God's infinite in all of His attributes. So His justice would have annihilated them, okay? If you'll permit me to use that word. But His grace did what? His grace,
Way back.
okay. What about Noah's Ark?
He saved enough people
Yeah,
to
that
start over.
that looked like an act of grace, wasn't it? So it's just false to say that the Old Testament, that there's no grace in the Old Testament. Okay, do you remember what I said here? Anybody? on 17. See, I said, I mentioned the mutual exclusiveness idea here. Grace and truth did not originate with the new covenant, but were also spoken explicitly in the old covenant. The law itself was an expression of God's grace. What did the law do, among other things? This is really brought out in Romans. Have y'all studied Romans here in a while? I'd love to go through Romans sometimes.
The law is supposed to reconcile them to God, although on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't.
But it was imperfect, wasn't it?
It was imperfect.
And-
And repeated over.
Right. And the law, the biggest thing the law did was to show how sinfulness, you know, well, you remember what Paul said? I wouldn't know sin except by what? By the law. You see, the law revealed how sinful man was. I like to use this illustration. It's like looking in a mirror. And so you look in a mirror, excuse me, and perhaps you see dirt on your face, okay? The mirror reveals that you have dirt on your face, but what does the mirror do to help you clean up? Nothing, you see. But that's not the way it is in the New Testament. All right, no one seen God at any time. The only begotten Son who's in the bosom of the Father has declared him. Now, what in the round world is that about? Why does all of a sudden that come on the scene?
Well, I think that, and I'm sort of seeing the big picture is that John is saying, here is God coming in the flesh, and that before you couldn't see him without you died.
Okay.
But now, here the Word being part of God that was there in the beginning, you're seeing him walking, talking, living amongst you. So in a way, you're seeing.
Okay, you can see God revealed,
Right.
can't you? The word God here is without, right here, without the definite article. So the emphasis is on deity, on quality. See, it's not saying no one's seen the Father at any time. No one's seen, see, the point is no one has seen the essence of deity. Nobody's seen that. It's not been seen. But something has happened now, as Brother Donald has pointed out. Now, notice what's happened. He has declared him. Declared him. The word for declare there, you probably figured out that I guess I like word studies because I can't. Wow, that's an exciting eraser. Sheesh. Never saw one of those. Okay, where were we? Declared. Okay. The declare. Oh, too many. Okay. That word is from this fancy word here. No, I'm sorry. This word right here is the word that we get from the word that's there. It's in my commentary. And so exegesis. Now what's that fancy word about? All it means is to, like, what I tried to do in this commentary is to exegete the passages. So what was I trying to do? I was trying to explain, trying to reveal, the meaning, Mark, of the passages. You see what I'm saying? And so, and then there's another word, it's hermeneutics, it's interpretation, but what we're doing there is we're trying to apply it. So see, and so, I think I said this in my interpretation class, exegesis is trying to find out what happened then and there, you see. And interpretation, hermeneutics, is trying to apply it to the here and now. You see what I'm saying? So we know, what happened, or we've got to find out what happened then before we can find out what we're supposed to do when. Now, you see that? If you can't ever see what they saw, you can't ever figure out what we're supposed to believe and do today. That's the truth of it. You see, Rebecca, what we don't want to do is get an idea in our mind and then say, let's see if we can find a scripture in the Bible that'll support that. You see, that is bad procedure, and a lot of folks do that. But what we've got to do is try to see, like Book of Revelation. I had a professor in graduate school, although I never did have an opportunity to take his class, but he always said, you've got to see Revelation through first century glasses. And see, that's really, what I'm trying to say. Donald?
Well, I have a want your thoughts on this, because I've talked to a guy that really has trouble with the Godhead.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, your arms, your legs, or whatever is part of you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And if you cut your arm off and set it in here, and you go in another room, you're not here.
Well, that'd be
anymore.
painful, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You're not here anymore.
I'm just messing with you.
But here it said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then, I hate to use the word attribute,
Mm-hmm.
but Word is an attribute of God. He spoke something and it happened. Could we say that as part of God, Jesus was sort of that attribute of God in giving His Word to us?
Well, all right, you going back to John 1:1. Jesus is the Word, okay? In the beginning was the Word was with God. The Word was deity, okay? Just like our words reveal us, Jesus, being the Word, was the ultimate revealer of God. I'd rather say that instead of attribute. He's the ultimate revealer of God. Over and over, like in John 5, let's see, in verse 19 and following, Jesus says, the works that I do, the works the Father gives me. The words that I say are the words that the Father, gives me. I don't know if I've...
Well, yeah, and what also confused me, a lot of times when we're talking about this, talk about the baptism. It said, here's the Holy Spirit set on His shoulder, and then we sort of see God up here, and we sort of see three different things. But on the other hand, we understand, where is God?
Mm-hmm.
He said, you go to the deepest ocean, you go to the deepest cave. He says, I'm there.
Right.
But God was everywhere.
Right.
He's not up there,
Yeah.
or wherever, but He's everywhere. But yet, here Jesus was too. And that's what's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, well, it is somewhat confusing, I think. What we have to remember is you have this thing that we call essence, divine essence, okay? Or divine nature. And there are three, I used to teach a whole course on the Godhead at Freed Hardeman, and there are three that partake of the divine nature. Who partakes of the divine nature? The Father. Who else? The Son. Some of you have that book that I wrote on the debate, the Light-Lewis debate. I think, Jonathan, didn't you get a copy of that? The first night of that debate was on the Godhead, and what I was arguing is there is only one divine essence, you see, but there are three personalities who partake of that essence. Can we study about that later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, good. All right, let's look at verse 19. Now, turn your commentaries. I want to point out something to you, if you have it with you, on page 64 and 65. What I really like is this kind of unveiled itself to me as I studied this. We've got, beginning in verse 19, the first full week of the ministry of Christ, culminating with the water to wine in John chapter 2, the first full week. So let's look at the first full week. The first day, and I've tried to put that here, see, I got day 1, and something's happening. There we go. Let's see. Let me bring up here. Oops. All right, now, day 1, this is John's witness to the Jews. I just love this. So, the testimony of John, this is testimony of John when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him. So, why would Jews send priests and Levites out? Because John's making noise, right? I mean, John's preaching. And he's not just one of these guys over here in a corner whispering. He's doing what? What does the Bible say he did? He cried out. So he's making a lot of noise. And he's baptizing. And so that raises a lot of questions, in the minds of the officials, in particular. So they send some folks out, to ask him his identity. So who are you? I love the way John responds to this. He confessed, did not deny, but confessed. Look how John the Apostle writes. Why couldn't he just say he confessed, I'm not the Christ? For emphasis, he confessed, and he did not deny it, and he confessed what? That he is not what? He is not the Christ. Now, so they ask him, what then? Are you Elijah? Why would they ask if he's Elijah? Okay. You remember, wasn't it Malachi? That said something about the coming of Elijah? Is that right? I'm not Elijah. That's verse 21. Malachi 4 and 5. I was looking for, the verse. In Matthew 11:14, Jesus says that John was the Elijah to come, but he was not the Elijah in the sense that the Jews were thinking. See, John came like Elijah, okay? Is the basic idea. So he says, I am not. And then he says, are you a prophet? And he answered what? No. You pick up on anything here? I know you have. I am not the Christ. And then what was next?
Not Elijah.
I am not. And then what's next? No. I'm talking about his answers. I'm not the Christ. I am not. No. It's like, listen,
He's not
boys,
elaborating.
leave me alone here. I'm telling you, I'm not the one. I'm the voice of one crying in the wilderness. He's preferred before me. God sent me to tell you all about him, and I'm pointing to him. Don't you love that? Then they said, well, who are you, that we may give an answer? Well, and I just mentioned it. I'm the voice of one crying in the wilderness. Now, those who were sent were from the Pharisees. We might expect some Sadducees, but it's interesting, in this whole gospel, you never have the name Sadducees mentioned. And you only have scribes mentioned one time, and that's in John chapter 8, according to the King James and New King James, version. Now, why wouldn't we expect some Sadducees? What did the Sadducees primarily control? The temple. And who primarily had control of the synagogues? The Pharisees. See, the synagogues were like for the common people, okay? Where did most of the priests come from? The Sadducees, okay? So they were kind of the big dogs, The Pharisees were more, among the people, okay? They asked, saying, why then do you baptize if you're not the Christ or Elijah or the prophet? By the way, what prophet? Deuteronomy 18. Do you remember that? Moses said, one of these days, a prophet's going to rise up from among the brethren, and he will be like me, and he will speak, and you better listen to him. And in the second gospel sermon that Peter preached, what did he quote? He quoted Deuteronomy 18. And he says, that prophet that Moses said is going to come, guess what? He's here. And you better listen to him. That was in his second sermon. So John said, I baptize with water, but there stands one among you whom you do not know. It is he who coming after me is preferred before me, whose sandal strap I'm not worthy to loose. Does John know his place? He does, doesn't he? These things were done in Bethabara beyond Jordan, or I prefer to say Bethany. Okay, here we go. Now, can you see this? All right, let's see. All right. Bethany beyond Jordan. What's all this jazz right here, Rebecca? Why does that do that? I mean, I didn't ask it to or anything. I'm just trying to tell you where we are. Okay, and we need to be up here on the north part of the, well, look, see right here? Here you go, Bethany beyond Jordan. See it? Okay, now, Jesus is going to leave this place, and he's going to go somewhere. By the way, this is where Jesus was baptized, right here, Bethany beyond Jordan. He's going to leave this place, and he's going to go somewhere. Where does he go next? The next big place.
Is it Jerusalem?
Jerusalem, where he does the miracle, you know, the water to wine. I like to kind of keep up with where we are. All right, the next day. All right, how you like that? By the way, here's a picture of the Jordan I took when I was over there. Does it look a little different than you expected? Not quite like Tennessee, is it?
It's not.
Or the Mississippi, or the Ohio.
Looks like a creek around here.
It's, and every time I look at that, I always think of Naaman. And the reason I think of Naaman, you remember that the messenger told Naaman to do it where? Y'all listen up. Do it where? In Jordan. Remember what Naaman said?
He didn't want to go to that nasty Jordan.
Yeah, he said, why can't I just go to the rivers of Pharpar and Abana? They were called the golden waters. I've always wondered if Naaman was thinking, I don't want to get in that muddy water, I'd rather go home. Okay, love y'all. Thank you.